simps and also virgins, and welcome back to Cron's magical crypto cave.
Oh, you landed it this time. All right, beautiful. It's time to get back into that magic net money business because Bitcoin has opened up for a new month of new activities, and I want to be going over the August statistics as always here. So as you can see on this chart, I do have all of the previous Augusts for Bitcoin's history marked off, and we've gone through the full statistics on them, marking off the probability that we've seen green closures versus red closures and what those months have typically looked like. And I'll just spoil the surprise right here, going all the way up to the top end data, and tell you that August is actually one of the worst, if perhaps not the worst month for Bitcoin, just in terms of whether it's likely to close positively or negatively, with only 5 out of 15 of the prior Augusts in Bitcoin's history closing positively. Now, that does give it about a 66.66 and repeating, of course, probability to be closing negatively. But I do want to highlight one stat, just a random weird stat that I kind of saw as I was going along this. And that weird stat is that the August after the halving, which is the year that we're in right now, has actually always been positive. So despite this, being certainly more weighted in terms of negative closures, that data is valid, and perhaps that does play out again. Anyways, in the event that we do see a positive August, we have seen on average a positive return of just over 24.5%, with a median significantly lower, I should add, at 13.5%, or just above 13.5%. So, what does that tell me? It tells me that we have a major outlier here. Of course, we do see one of the winning Augusts many moons ago producing about 65%. I think that's going to be the culprit in that data set, and the median win is probably going to be a lot more accurate here. On the losing side, the average loss return has been about 14.5%, with the median loss coming in a little bit lower at 11.30%. A little bit more comparable, or a lot more comparable, I should say, than the spread between the winning side. But let's just look at what that would essentially imply in terms of price action. I need to reference this one more time. Okay, yes, median win. We're going to go off the medians for the win side. 13.6%. So we already have the open, obviously. If Bitcoin were to play out a move like that, that would put Bitcoin into the sort of early/mid 130s region. And of course, to the downside, if Bitcoin were to play out, let's say about 11, 12, 13% move to the downside from here, from open to closure, what would that look like on price action? That would put Bitcoin effectively at $100,000, give or take a little bit from that number. So do be aware of kind of the general ranges here for Bitcoin. These have been playing out really, really well, especially in the past few months. And as always, we're a lot more interested in the average returns and in the median returns, rather than just the likelihood of it to close positively or negatively, because that is massively variable. Anyways, we'll also go over, of course, what day is most likely to produce the low of August for both positive and negative closing months here. And if you go over the full data set, we can see that in general, August sees the lows of the month actually relatively early within the month compared to many of the months that we've looked at throughout this past year. In this case, for the positive closing August, we actually do see the low coming in very early within the month, for the very minimal amount of August that we have seen close positive, that is, with actually 1, 2, 3, 4 of these closing within the first week, and in 2012, which is a very, very early time in Bitcoin's history, coming in the, closer to the end of the third week of the month. So, I would say maybe that's a bit of an outlier right here. Again, median is going to be about number 4. So if you are bullish, you're looking for the low to be put in relatively early within the month, which isn't always the case, because I always know that there's a few people in the comment section be like, fucking duh, dude, yeah, of course it's going to be a positive month. It comes in comes early in the month. No, actually, it doesn't always work like that. We've seen that many times now. So for lobotomized people who cannot understand the subtle nuances of such data, well, you're on the wrong fucking channel, you goddamn lobotomized moron. Get the fuck out of here. Just kidding. I'm also a lobotomized moron, but I try. Anyways, on top of that, I do want to acknowledge that on the negative side, we actually do see something significantly different than what we've seen on basically any other month for this same data. So generally, we've seen the low of the month for negative closing months besides August come in, between the 3rd and 4th week of the month. Now, for August in particular, we see this come in a lot earlier. In fact, on average, coming in at the end of the second week, around day number 14 to 15, with a median coming in about 17. And you can see that there's a big spread on these. But what is really, what really stands out to me is that we actually do see some of these come in, really early within the month. If you recall last year, we did see a pretty nasty dump on the 4th or 5th, depending upon your time zone there. So, it certainly can come very early within the month. So if you are bearish for August, you're actually, whether you're bullish or bearish for August, you're probably looking for the majority of the downside to be done within the first couple weeks, I suspect. Now, in terms of where we essentially should be aiming, looking for the low, which has been incredibly useful data for prior months, I've gone ahead and marked off all of the differentials between the open of August and the low of August, not the close of August, but the low of August, and then bifurcated that between positive and negative closing months. And what I found here was super interesting. So I did spell August wrong. Sorry, my OCD is massively disturbing me right now. What I found here was actually super interesting to me. Perhaps it will be too as well. Maybe I'm just a fucking weird ass TA nerd, which is actually true. So well, there goes that. Anyways, as I debate my life, we can see that even for positive closing Augusts, the differential between the open and the low of the month has actually been close to 10% on average. The median coming in a little bit lower than that at about 8%. But I want to highlight here that the lowest, the absolute lowest differential from open to low for positive closing August was in 2013, and that was just under 5%. So let's just look at what that would essentially imply in terms of price. First, we'll go off the average slash median because they're very close to each other, and then we'll go off that lowest. But 10% to the downside from here, or a little bit less than 10% to the downside from here, would put Bitcoin effectively at the open for July, which is about 107. Now, on this channel, we've been saying, hey, Bitcoin likely to come down somewhere between about 105 to 110 on a pullback, and I think that plays relatively well with that. Now, even if Bitcoin were to, play closer to what has been the minimum of those retracements, 5% would put you where? That would put you, again, for perspective, just below 112, about 111 and a half. So again, these are the areas of interest. I do believe if you are going to be a long-term Bitcoin boolah, thinking that the market is still, continuing up and to the right, those would be the major areas of interest, for a likely pullback and a major low being put in there probably within the first couple weeks of this month of August. And then we'd be expecting, the back half of August to continue to kind of dig itself out. I wouldn't necessarily be looking for like new highs or nothing like that, but, dig itself out and try to assemble a bit of a rally to the upside, likely to be completed in September if it's going to be happening at all. That is. Now, on the negative side, obviously a lot more nasty here. The average differential between the open and the low of the month is about 23.22%, and the median coming in very close to that as well, about 23.55. So very, very close there. We can just go off of like 23%. Again, this is assuming that August would be a negative closing month, so perhaps you're looking at a move all the way down to $90,000. I think it's a little bit less likely myself, but hey, if you are looking for a negative August, well, that is on the table there. Again, if we go over even the minimum for these, it's been about 7.77%. We kind of already know where that's going to be. It's going to be in the upper like 106, 107, 108 region, I suppose. So, keep that in mind. And again, we do have that weird statistic that just every year after the halving actually has been positive for August. But even then, for those positive closing Augusts, like I said, on average, we've seen about an 8% the median is about an 8% differential between open and low. So with the minimum coming in around 5%. So, that could still be a big number here in terms of, in terms of a downside move, like a $5,000 move kind of from where we're at right now, even if you are bullish. I do think that that's not so crazy to be expecting. Anyways, as I get back into my notes, I do want to also acknowledge as we go onwards and forwards that, where is it? Yes, we'll go over here, that on the monthly time frame for Bitcoin, we can see that the month of July closed very far away from the red moving average, the 5 EMA. And if you've been on this channel now for even a few months, you know where I'm going with this. If you're new, then listen carefully because it's actually like super, super, super useful, or at least, I think so. But when you see these higher term time frames close, far away from those major moving averages, or in this case, the red 5 EMA, Bitcoin traditionally does not like to do anything, in a continuous fashion before reconnecting with that moving average. So I'll give you an example, and I think that's going to hammer in the point rather well. You can see that way back on over here in November, there was a disconnect when Bitcoin had this massive girthy green dildo that absolutely shoved bearish Anguses with girth and power, closing very, very far away from that red 5 EMA. The next month, basically didn't do anything from open to closure. It was stagnant, and it wasn't until January, another month later, where it actually reconnected with that major moving average that it actually started to move once again. Same thing over here. You can see that Bitcoin closed well and far away in March of 2024 from that red 5 EMA. The next month it comes back down, gets close to it, and then the next month after that does officially retest it. Again, it doesn't need to be exactly like this, but generally speaking, it's not wise in my experience to be looking for any sort of continuation in whatever direction Bitcoin is currently positioned in until that reconnect happens. Again, this can also happen to the downside as well. You see this one happen here where Bitcoin closed above. The next month, yes, it makes a move higher, makes a move lower, but it closes, basically doing nothing, and then makes this move in the other direction. So that's kind of my point here. Again, it doesn't imply reversal. It just implies that this month, from open to close, we're probably not going to see anything like super crazy, to be honest. Like, it's probably going to be a relatively boring month. And maybe like early on within the month, we do see a downside try. And hopefully for the Bitcoin Bulah's sake, it does pick up itself by its bootstraps. Let's just say somewhere between like 105 to 110 region, something like that would look okay. And within the context of the data set, what else do we want to speak about? I'll bring back another indicator. I'll get asked about this quite frequently, but I just don't think it matters that much anymore because it hasn't been, operating in the way that we expect. This is the accumulation and distribution indicator right here, which is effectively just a net delta of volume indicator for Bitcoin. In the past, it's been a super, super strong signal for the end of markets when we see the green extremes go from a positive slope to a negative slope. That's effectively marked off the end of, of all previous cycles. This cycle is not operated like that. It's actually been headed down, generally speaking, since August of last year. So it's continuing down here, and yes, it's opened up a lot further down as well in this month of August. So if you are reading this traditional way, it would be implying that this is a divergence and this is a weak move and yada yada, and this is likely to come down. We haven't really seen it work in the way that we've expected from the past. I mean, like I said, this has been effectively down since August of last year, and Bitcoin went from August of last year at like $50,000 all the way up to $120,000. So I don't think it matters that much, to be honest. But for the people who are clamoring for that information, well, there you go. Like I said, take from it what you will. On top of that, we should also reference the monthly stochastic momentum oscillator. There's something very interesting right here. The monthly stochastic oscillator is going to get back into the critical zone here and continue up in a pretty emphatic manner. And what's even more important here is that we actually do see that the stochastic momentum pivot has actually shifted down. So this is typically a bullish signal overall, because I believe it went from like 100,000-ish region now down to like 95,000. Again, doesn't mean that Bitcoin can't fail here, but does suggest that, the downside that we may see in the early portion of this month probably doesn't get continuation, at least not this month. But that would imply just overall this move perhaps not has seen its culmination just yet. Again, this is within the context of some of the lowest volatility for the lowest time, the lowest volatility for the longest time on the monthly time frame, represented by the BBWP indicator right here. In the past few years, every time that we've seen this get relatively low, it's preceded all the major moves, basically. Both the upside and the downside, obviously, BBWP volatility is direction neutral. But as of right now, as long as this is positioned to the upside, that is going to have an upside bias for a resolution. Again, it's a monthly time frame. It can take a long time to play out, 2-3 months, something like this. But, and again, Bitcoin can easily afford a pullback down to like 110, give or take. But, that would still give an overall bias. So I suppose there would rise a question of, okay, what number would have to be violated, like massively violated, like a bad bear, a very bad bear who needs to go to fucking bear jail and be registered as a bear offender. Well, what would require such things at this point? If Bitcoin closes below the red moving average, which is about 107-ish region, or effectively, July's open, yeah, let's call it 107 by the end of August. Okay, yeah, I'm ready to say this. Whatever cycle we're witnessing right now, it's going to go into a nice sideways and downside move. Maybe it's a bear market cycle. Maybe it's not. I don't fucking know, but I'd just be biased towards downside. But until then, Bitcoin has a pretty big buffer zone here. Like I said, it's not out of the, it's not out of left field or crazy to expect Bitcoin to even go down like 5% from August open. So again, that puts us at like 110-ish region. And again, that 5 EMA is all the way at 108 or so. So, a reconnect down there is like it's not crazy or anything like this. Anyways, as you already probably know, we've been having a generally bearish bias on this channel since the end of last week, suggesting that, hey, if Bitcoin did not reclaim 120 by about last Friday, then, just expect downside. We've been getting downside ever since then. And again, this is just another reminder that the trend is your friend. Hey, lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high. Crazy. It's fucking crazy. Wait. Are you telling me that the trend can be your friend? Or are you telling me that the trend is fucking my asshole? Well, it could be both, actually. And some people consider that to be their friends. Now, if you are not of such opinions, well, I would suggest not to denigrate the trend, because it is probably the only thing that really does matter if you're looking at just general directional analysis here. So, Bitcoin putting in several of these lower highs. I've seen many people fight this now. Look, on this channel, we're very happy to switch around our opinions when the data changes, or especially when the trend changes. And this is exactly what's happening right here. So I hope that there's been really no surprises for anyone who's been watching this channel. I'm not going to get everything right, of course, but we go off of probabilities here and we go off of trend. And in these cases, it's going to give you a higher sort of probability of getting these directional moves correct. So in this case, yeah, we're seeing this one follow through. Again, I think it probably has a little bit more lower to go. It'd be a bit uncharacteristic, even if we do expect a bullish August for Bitcoin to stop where it's at right now. Yeah, it's fighting with that, the white 200 moving average on the 4-hour time frame here. But whether it breaks down today, whether it breaks down next week, whatever, I do think that this one is likely to go lower, but that's, again, not a death sentence. Coming back down to retest the highs of May of this, of this current year, not anything super crazy, and very much, relevant to how Bitcoin has been playing out a lot of these corrections. Anyway, so yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. Again, higher term time frame stochastic momentum, as far as the daily goes, will still continue to favor the downside. As far as the daily goes, it is pivoted to the downside as long as Bitcoin's below 117, 150 on a daily closing basis. And right now trading, almost $3,000 below that pivot. The 2-day time frame, which I believe is also closing tonight. Just closed last night. Is going to be headed to the downside as long as Bitcoin's below 119. 3-day time frame also headed down sharply, closing tonight, and will continue as long as Bitcoin's below 120. 5-day time frame is going to lose a critical zone here, which I think is actually rather important. Again, within the context of very, very low volatility. So to me, this is a downside setup. Like, just to put it fucking bluntly for the lobotomized morons out there in the world. Yeah, it's just it's just more likely. It's just more likely. It doesn't mean it's guaranteed, but hey, 120 is a pivot right here as long as Bitcoin's below there. Again, my rule. When I see all of the higher term timeframes align, which right now all of them are, even the 10-day and probably even the weekly. Yeah, the weekly is as well, or about to by the end of today's closure for CME below 118,600. We're going to see all of these headed in the same direction. And, I'm just going to continue to be biased towards, continuing downside, again, with the highlighted area between about 105 to 110. We'll see what happens if and when price action does get down around there. If we start to see, Bitcoin really dig itself sideways, I would look at that as a really, really good signal. But until then, with volatility this low, it does look like the next most likely direction for a move is going to continue to be down in alignment with the trends as well, even on the daily right here. And that, now that I recognize it, and just following up from yesterday's video, again, we do have what is effectively a descending triangle. That looks like it's probably going to be resolved today if Bitcoin again closed below 116 on CME. Right now trading almost $1,000 below that. Less than 4 hours to go on this one, and the implied move would be down to about 110 if that does complete. So we'll continue to update on this. Like I said, no more videos on the weekend, but I will be uploading some shorts and actually maybe even a fundamental video. I'm actually quite excited about that. But we're going to be moving around again, and I expect some more bullshit as always. So if you're trying to reach out to myself or Elsa, just understand that, especially throughout this next, I would say 5-day period, it's probably going to be a little bit more hectic and a little bit more problematic for us. We'll, as always, do our best to get back to anyone who reaches out. But yeah, we're going to be moving again, setting everything up and then going from there. So yeah, anyways, as always, I would wish everyone the best. Probably should have mentioned this earlier. If you're looking at or if you're interested in any one of these tools or programs that we spoke about in today's video, which actually we didn't go over too many except for some stuff in the Character Indicator Suite and also the price action pivots indicator, you can actually try them out for free for 7 days for any new user. And, there's no code, no nothing like that. There's no strings attached. Like, try it out, see if it's for you, see if it's not for you, and go for there. As always, you're the best decision maker for yourself. And on that note, I'd like to wish you the best. Take care, much love, and a special message from Elsa.
Fuck you, and I'll see you tomorrow.
That was rude.